Welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. I'm your host, Alec Lewis. This is episode 108, recording on Monday, September 1st. It's Labor Day. We're out here working. You know it. That's what we do here on the Alec Lewis Show. The guest for you today, cannot imagine a better primer on what you might see from the Vikings defense this year than Cody Alexander. He has a Substack, MatchQuarters.com, where he writes about defense at a level that no one else in the business does. He also has a podcast. It's called Let's Talk Ball, and you will see here over the course of this episode why it is as good as it is, because there are very few people who, like Cody, analyze defense the way that he does. He's a longtime coach, worked at Baylor around the time that Art Browse was there, and so really was schooled in some of the spread. He's got multiple books, 6 books, I believe, kind of all on defense and how defense is trended. So we got, got into everything. And you guys will really enjoy it. Talked about pass rush coverage, cornerbacks, Javon Hargrave, Jonathan Allen, everything. So, was great. As always, if you're here on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Helps us out a ton. Really appreciate that. If you're listening on Apple, Spotify, you can rate and review and all that good stuff. This show is presented by First Resource Bank. That is a member FDIC bank in the Minneapolis area. I'm getting together this week later on with Tim Siegley, Aaron Siegley, Charlie Anderson. They run the thing. They care about the community. Big time Vikings fans. The information to their bank is in the description below. Please go check them out. And then if you want to sponsor this podcast as part of the 2025 season, please shoot me an email, aleclewis54@gmail.com. The information for that is in the description as well, but would love to support. If you're a Vikings fan, have a business here in the local area, why not hop aboard the Alec Lewis Show train as we keep on chugging. 3 episodes this week, and have Pete Burst on Wednesday, and then preview the Bears game later in the week. So stay locked in for that. At The Athletic, have a story on Tuesday that you guys will probably enjoy. Been working on it for a minute. And then we'll have more analysis and stuff as we get going here in the lead up to week 1. We are a week out. I cannot believe it. Time flies. In a week's time, J.J. McCarthy will be playing not too far from where he grew up. Pretty crazy deal. With that, let's get right into our conversation with Cody Alexander of Match Quarters. All right, Cody, welcome back to the Alec Lewis Show. We had you some point last fall. I think it was probably early on. Brian Flores was wreaking havoc. I'm like, I need somebody to explain this. You're usually my go-to. How have you been? How much did you enjoy the first college football weekend? I mean, I was watching probably way too much, streaming on my phone when I'm out and should just be hanging out with friends and stuff. But how much did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it's nice to have football back. And in fact, not only that, but it's really a defensive-led weekend in college football, which is very, very rare. There were not a lot of high-scoring games. I mean, most of the major games were defensive-focused. I know people are going to be like, oh, well, the offenses aren't doing any good. But I really think that we're kind of back where we are with the NFL, where the defense actually matters again, and it kind of has the upper hand a little bit.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think on Saturday morning, I'm texting you, what is a coffee house blitz? I mean, you guys, I mean, all of the football people in the football world, you're like, what a sick coffee house blitz from Matt Patricia. I'm like, what even is that? And you're explaining it to me. Might as well explain it to the listeners.
Yeah, so a coffee house pressure is when you have a linebacker that's mugged on the line of scrimmage. So they're lined up on the line of scrimmage. He's going to fake like he's going to drop into coverage. And then he's going to reinsert himself back into the blitz. And so that stop-start action is where the coffee house term comes from, like being at an old coffee house. When you used to not be able to order on your phone ahead of time, you had to actually go in, stop, start, talk to people online. So it's supposed to get the offensive line or the running back to go to the next guy, and then you insert back in wherever you fit. And so we saw actually multiple this weekend. Also, corner blitzes are back. I don't know if you noticed that this weekend as well.
Yeah, there was, I think I texted you this as well. Blake Baker, who's the LSU defensive coordinator, he used to be the Missouri defensive coordinator. So I'm very familiar with Blake, but I also, like, I mean, you know this about me. I love college football. I've
Right.
gotten more fascinated in what these guys do. And he's got a corner blitzing through the B gap. And honestly, as I'm watching a lot of this, I mean, specific to Ohio State and Matt Patricia, I'm like, they're disguising coverages the way that Brian Flores does. And then as I'm watching a lot of these pressures, I'm thinking Flores and this staff is just going to rip off what they're seeing nonstop. And it was fascinating. I do want to ask you. We're going to get into Viking stuff, obviously, but was what you saw from Matt Patricia in his first game as the defensive coordinator at Ohio State? Did that surprise you? Like, I mean, I don't know what you thought of Matt Patricia going into this, but I kind of was just curious, as someone who follows it the way that you do, what you thought of the performance he put on against Arch Manning in Texas, because it impressed me, and I went back and watched the film because I'm a lunatic.
Well, I will start with this. I have been saying really all spring and summer, let's take a pause on the Arch Manning is, the next greatest quarterback of all time. We did not see him. The two games that he played last year as a starter were against I'm talking bottom 30 off defenses. And so I wanted to press pause on that. So I wasn't surprised with the struggle for Texas, brand new receivers, brand new quarterback. Where I was surprised with Patricia is I thought he had really amplified what Steve Belichick was trying to do at Washington. So if you watched Washington football at all, you saw a lot of, and you see this with the Vikings, a lot of 5-1 looks, right? You had a
Hmm.
lot of, we call it penny package. So you have a lot of 5-1 looks. You have a lot of nickel sub packages in there. I thought what he did a little bit better at than what Belichick had been doing at Washington was he used really his kind of off-ball Frankie Louvu, Andrew Van Ginkel type linebacker, and he would move him around. So it wasn't just always away from the nickel like you see with the Eagles and Zach Bond, like you see with Quinn and Frankie Louvu, where hey, wherever the nickel is, we're going to walk you down opposite. We're going to get into a 5-man front and do a lot of that. I also think, too, a lot of credit is being given to Patricia, but people forget that there is also Boyer on staff there as well.
Interesting.
If you don't know if you are a Flores fan, you know who Boyer is from his Miami days. I thought a lot of these pressures were a good call. So he's probably helping with the third down. A lot of odd front pressures, the coffee house pressure you saw. Looking back at it, I've watched this game now about 3 times. I, yeah, I'm a
That's
sicko.
nuts. That's nuts.
Yeah, but it's not as complicated as people probably are perceiving it to be. He did a lot of simple things. But you can do that when you have NFL talent, and that
Yeah.
secondary is essentially 5 NFL guys. So I thought he did a really good job.
We're going down this road, but I mean, part of me wonders. UNC plays TCU tonight, and part of me wonders because you mentioned the NFL guys. Like, is North Carolina going to be as capable as Ohio State was and is to be able to be as funky as Ohio State has been? Like, that's a question that I have as I watch this game. And again, it's probably ridiculous of me to wonder that, but I do.
Well, I think that here's the thing. If you go and you actually watch, Texas did really, really well when they spread Ohio State out and they went with tempo. So they basically, when Texas played a college style offense, the NFL coach had a little bit of a trouble because in the NFL, everything, and it's, you know this, like especially with KOC being the head coach of the Vikings, everything is so curated. They want to have the time to call the play. What is the scenario? Where are we at on the field? Let's get the correct package. And that takes time. So, yes, all of that is happening within 40 seconds. But as we know in the NFL, the clock is, the snap is usually happening with about 10 seconds or less on almost every single play. In college, you can really tempo a defense, and I felt like there were times when Texas probably should have ran with a little bit more of a,
Hmm.
the old school Big 12 style of offense just to really make him think and really, hey, you can't get into your exact call that you want. And so I think with Belichick going up against TCU, that's going to be another thing that I'm going to be watching for is does he adjust to the tempo? I think Steve being in the Big Ten last year has already, hey, Dad, these are some things that we need to watch for. These are some things that we need. Hey, we probably can't get to that this time. I think the creativity and the technique, that's what really shocked me with Ohio State. The technique was on point. You can
Yeah.
definitely tell that was a Patriot led defense because the technique was phenomenal.
You made a reference earlier in this, probably like 5 minutes ago, about how you feel like things are kind of shifting back to the defensive side, to the defensive coordinator spot. What did you mean by that as we segue here to Brian Flores and this Vikings defense?
Well, there is really a pattern that the football goes in that's very predictable is that the offense is going to kind of spread everybody out. They're going to get people in space. They're going to start scoring points. Defense adjusts by putting more sub packages out there. And we saw this with the Tampa 2 days, and then everybody goes back in. I think now we're post spread era. 2018, bro. I've said this million
Yeah.
times. 2018 broke football. We're not going back. We're not going to do the Neanderthal ball, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. I grew up in Kansas City with Marty Schottenheimer, so we had Marty ball, which was 3 yards in a cloud of dust, play really good defense. We're not going back to those days. So what I mean by that is that defenses now have kind of figured out, hey, we've problem solved. We know how to teach these and create repeatable patterns, schematic fluidity, meaning that I can put a bunch of different packages on, but we can run the same playbook. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's much harder for offensive coordinators now to be like, okay, I have this package in, which means these 10 plays are what we're going to pull from. This is the scenario. Okay, boom, here I know exactly what the defense is doing. Or even past, I think coaches understand. I grew up, I cut my teeth at Baylor
Yeah.
with Art Briles, where you basically had to play 4-2-5. You could do some things, but it was very simple. You essentially had to just like cover space, cap verticals. Now I think people are trying to do stuff right. They're being able to teach it. So I think the defense has kind of pulled that back, but it's not going to stay for very long because the offense sets the table, and so they're going to change the rules on everybody, and they're going to change it up.
I've never asked you this as generally as I'm about to, but like, where is Brian Flores for you when you're thinking about like hierarchy or rankings of defensive coordinators? Like, where do you have him, and why do you have him where you do?
He's definitely a top 5 defensive coordinator in the NFL, and really a football guy. I think what he's doing is so unique in the NFL just because of the volume at which he is blitzing. I mean, even a guy like Bowles in Tampa Bay is not blitzing at the same rate. I mean, if you look at the blitzing rates in the NFL last year, Minnesota was almost 50%, meaning that they were sending
Yeah.
5 or more on 50% of the plays. And depending on who you use and define blitz, but the way that essentially PFF does it is that if you send 5, that's a pressure. And so they're going to count that as a blitz. And so they're almost like 6 points higher than Tampa Bay. When you even break it down further on early down, so this is first and second down, he's over 10% more aggressive than Tampa Bay or the Broncos. And so what you're doing is you're essentially saying we are going to get you behind the chains on early downs. You're not going to be able to run the ball. All your play action stuff, if you want to run play action, do it. There's going to be a guy in the quarterback space. He's going to have to check it down. You want to run screens like the Panthers tried to do 2 years ago? Go ahead, because we're one of the better tackling teams in space because that's all we do. And so I think for me, what he's doing is so different and foreign to the Fangio adjacent crews and some of these other defensive coordinators, like especially like a McDonald, a Mentor. These names that get thrown around as like, hey, these are the next guys coming up. What he's doing is essentially he's flipped the meta in the NFL and says, we don't blitz on third down anymore. We blitz on first, and we do it really, really well.
As a coach, to do that, like, does that take a certain amount of boldness or like just like fearlessness? What does it take to be a coach? I mean, you've done it. Like to be a coach and to blitz like that on early downs. Does it take like a walking the plank just type of fearlessness, or like what does that require, I guess, for a guy to be as willing to do it as they are and have been?
It's almost collegiate in its approach. Like it's almost like high school, right? Like that, like you always hear the term, "Oh, that's sophomoric," right? Or like, "Oh, that's just you're immature, you're young, you don't know what you're talking." Like it's almost that approach where it's so foreign to what everybody in the NFL does in terms of a philosophy that it just sends people spiraling, especially offensive coordinators who are so used to a certain set of rules being played by, and then you just flip the meta and say, nah, we're going the opposite, where everybody's passive and playing base on early downs. No, we're going to blitz you over 50% of the time on early downs. And in fact, we're going to heat you up as we get going. And then on third down, we're just going to drop 8, or
That's
we're
what they
going to
do.
play Tampa 2.
It's crazy. No, and that's where, like, I mean, one of the things I wanted to get into in this conversation was I expect them this year, and I mean, we'll go back a little bit, but I expect them this year to play a ton more with four down fronts. And so one of the questions I have or have had is they have been so successful stopping the run the last couple of years. And I felt like the defensive tackles, Harrison Phillips, Jonathan Bullard, they were so effective at stopping the run. And so part of my curiosity, one of the questions that I have is if you shift more to four down fronts with interior defenders who are more traditional pass rush, like penetrating interior defenders, can you stop the run as effectively as you have with those body types? And maybe, like to the point you're making, when you blitz the way you do on early downs, it doesn't. I mean, you're going to be able to stop the run with scheme regardless. Is that like? What do you think of that?
Here's where I think Flores is playing 4D chess and everybody else is playing checkers. And this is where I think you actually don't want to be elite at stopping the run. Because when you do that and you have a secondary like the Vikings, that you are going to get situations where teams are just going to say, fine, we'll just throw it. You get situations like the Packers a couple years ago where they said, you know what, we're just going to throw deep. We're just going to make it quick and we're going to do it. And you get situations like the Lions. We're going to use motion. We're going to mess with you, and we're going to make it to where you have to communicate on every single play. But we are throwing the ball. We don't care about running the ball anymore. And so I think it was really telling when they got rid of Phillips, because a lot of people, I'm sure in Minnesota, were like, "Well, wait a second, man. It's like our nose. We're not going to be very. We got a bunch of pass rushers now." And I think the point that Flores is trying to tell everybody is that if we're so good at stopping the run, everybody's going to throw the ball on us. We don't have the secondary to survive if we're going to go into games and we have to stop the pass on every single down. Now,
Hmm.
our pass rush is going to be amazing. But if you go and actually look at the pass rush, okay, 45 sacks is a lot, right? That's a pretty good amount. That gets you tied for fifth in the NFL with the Packers. But if you dig even deeper, your pressure percentage last year, not that great. Top 10, okay? But then if you go through and you accumulate all of those, the hits, the hurries, the pressures, and the sacks, and then you divide that by really kind of like how many pass rush snaps you're getting, Minnesota was 12th in PFF's pass rush production.
Hmm.
So sacks are sexy, and I get why fans want to see it. It's like interceptions as well. Like, for instance, the Cowboys just signed Deron Bland to a $90 million contract, which is wild to me because he had 1 year where he had a bunch of interceptions, right?
It's the
That's a
Cowboys.
high, right? I know. But it's a high variant stat that you can't guarantee that you're going to get that. So I think what they did in Flores was like, look, we can give up a little bit in the run game, knowing that we are going to get a little bit more runs just overall, which is going to limit the impact we have on the secondary, because you have to be sitting here as a Vikings fan and saying,
Hmm.
okay, Isaiah Rodgers, journeyman corner, Josh Metellus is great. near the line of scrimmage, but I don't want him deep safety all the time. Harrison Smith could fall off the age cliff tomorrow. We don't know. I mean, he could be Tom Brady and play till he's 45, or he could fall off the age cliff tomorrow. We don't know. Okay, Jeff Okudah, man, I'm telling you, that's a scary name to have as a starting corner, right? And you start really looking at these, okay, like, we're going with Dwight McGlothern as
The
you
hope would
get,
be.
so you see where I'm going. Like Byron Murphy obviously is a really good. They want him to play a little bit more nickel, but my point being is you're looking at a lot of these names and you're now saying, okay, Jonathan Allen, Hargrave, Redmond, Grenard, Cashman, Metellus as a blitzer, Ivan Pace as a blitzer. Okay, I feel, Andrew Van Ginkel. Okay, I feel really
Dallas
comfortable
Turner.
with the pass. Right, Dallas Turner. I mean, yeah, and then we're all forgetting that Dallas Turner is easily inserted into this as pass rush. So my point being is, I think he's trying to play a little bit of 4D chess here and saying, look, I don't mind if you get a 3-4 yard run on first down, because now I can get you in a predictably pass situation. We now can start messing with our tools and our packages. So I think that it's a little bit of it's what do they say? Addition by subtraction.
Interesting. So just listening to you, like you feel like, you'd rather give up more yards on the ground on early downs if that means less explosive plays given up on the back end. Like you're almost inviting those rundowns because those are like little jabs and they're not like the knockout blow that would be the 45-yard middle of the field just torch you. That's kind of what I'm hearing you say there.
Exactly. Let's look at this defense under Flores. It has performed. It has degraded literally since week 1. It degrades all the way through to week 18. And then you go to the playoffs and you have these losses in the playoffs. And so it's like, let's really look at this. What's the sustainability? I can't even say the word. What is the sustainability of this defense? And I think the evolution for him is being, look, we have all these tools and we are so pressure heavy, and they're not exotic pressures. These are run stopping pressures that you're seeing. They have about 2 or 3 of them that they love to use depending on what runs they think they're going to get. But it puts so much pressure on that secondary to be perfect. And when you just don't have those players, like I just named basically all of your corner room, Byron Murphy's probably the only one that you can take and can probably start on, 20 teams or 2/3 of this team. He could be a starting corner somewhere on all 32 teams. So outside of that, you have to really be cognizant as a defensive coach of like, okay, what if we just gave up a little bit more in the run? Instead of just being in the overwhelmingly best at stopping the run, what if we were like number 5 or 6? But we could then be a top 10. We could continue to be a top 10 passing unit, but it's sustainable because we're not just taking these haymaker shots at the end of the season.
Let me ask you this question. I mean, obviously they invested in Jonathan Allen, they invested in Javon Hargrave. Do you, like, as someone who thinks about building a defense, do you like the investments there as opposed to investments on the back end? Like, what do you think about kind of where they've put their chips? And it's obviously on the front end and the pass rush. Like, I said the other day, like if it's like a roulette table and the pass rush is red and coverage is black, like they are all on red, it feels like. Do you, as someone who thinks about these things the way you do like, is that sensible to you? Is that where you would put, is that how, like, what do you think of that?
So this is a trend in the NFL right now. We know analytically that it is pass rush over coverage, that if you really go coverage first, I mean, go look at the Browns a couple years ago that had one of the better defenses in the NFL. Coverage is a volatile thing. And if you play a ton of man coverage, it's hard to be the best coverage defense in the NFL and play a bunch of zone. That's why I think it's so interesting with the Vikings is that they are overwhelmingly they run the most zone in the NFL. They're also like one of the best passing, but it has to come down to that pass rush. And I think that you're seeing teams in the NFL really lean into that, say, hey, look, we can be average in the secondary if we're elite at pass rush because the ball is coming out at 2
Yeah.
seconds. Anybody can cover for 2 seconds. It's hard when you have to cover for that 2.5, 3 seconds. Now the quarterback's essentially playing, 7-on-7. And at the NFL, that's a losing battle. We saw that again. I go back to the Browns playing basically a 4-2-5 cover one defense. They get to the end of the year. They basically ran a track meet for 17 weeks. They go in, they have a couple of injuries. They have to play some cover three. They play zone. They're not as sticky. And then the Texans, Bobby Slovic looks like a genius against them. And just because they were able to move people around. And so I always go back to that. I go back to of look at what the Cowboys under Quinn had done. We're just going to play cover one. We're going to be really good against the pass, but we're not going to be able to stop the run at all because we only have pass rushers. And then look what happens. Game control is a real thing. They lose to a team like Cardinals, and you're like, they get smoked. And you're like, how? Well, the Cardinals has gotten 12 personnel and ran the ball. It's not that hard. Like, we can control the whole entire game. We can bleed the clock. Your elite offense is sitting down there. It's what teams try to do to the Chiefs, and it just doesn't ever work. So I think what you're seeing really is, again, they're betting on red. And they're saying, we believe that the pass rush, if we can get into the top 5 in pass rush production, not just sacks, but not just pressure rate, but actual production, the whole entire picture. If we can get into the top 5 in that, we know that we already have the secondary part of this works. They were number 3 in EPA last year. So that it works. If we can piece it together for one more year as we can try and figure out maybe in the draft next year, getting actual pieces that we can play. I think that you see this. You also see that they went and got corners that can play cover one. So I would look.
So that was the exact spot I was going to go. I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot over the last couple of years because I've asked you often, like, because you talk about the sustainability over the course of the season, and it's something the folks listen to this and watching on YouTube right now, like they will be like, yes, this is something we've asked about. Like, why does the defense seem to degrade over the course of a season? And you and I have discussed, like, are they able to spin the dial enough? Meaning, yes, you're playing all this non-traditional Tampa. Yes, you're playing some quarters and palms type stuff. And yes, you've got some of your like 6-man front pressure, Pat Narduzzi stuff. This is great. But if you can't mix in some of the cover one and just play man across the board at a more frequent rate, can you really give opposing offenses problems? And I do wonder if the youth, even though Isaiah Rodgers, to your point, like, he's unproven, even though I know internally they really like him, they really believe in him. Jeff Okudah is obviously bounced around. Can he, with his length, just jam guys in the line of scrimmage and they live off that? Does the youth in playing cover one allow them to spin the dial in a way that it's even, they give themselves more of a chance in the secondary because they're just more multiple than they've been? Like, do you think that is a possibility?
Well, I think what they saw last year with what the Broncos did, running a bunch of cover one, essentially doing what they're doing on the front end, is like, well, okay, like, we can do this. We can't live in this, but we can definitely run some more man coverage. And you saw that last year. I really thought last year you started seeing Flores kind of come back to what he had been doing. And especially, we saw the 23, it just looked like a crater, right? Like, the EPA just starts going down, production just starts going down and never stopped. I thought last year, probably around week 10, he starts running a little bit more man coverage. They start playing a little bit more of a traditional style of defense. And instead of just continuing going down, it kind of flattened out. And so it's not exactly where you want it to be. Like by the end of the year, their EPA, they were still number three, but they were like a full like point behind, Denver and Philly. So there was a definite separation and they had just kind of created, but it steadied out, and I think that's what gave them kind of the onus to go and say, look, well, let's go get Rodgers. Let's bring in Okuda. We're going to play maybe more match. We can play some more cover one. That's going to help amplify the pass rush a little bit more. And so now we can play a little bit more of a base defense, because if you really go back and look at it, this is a defense that played the least amount. I think they were 26th, no, 25th in base, meaning they're 3-4. They were 31st in nickel usage,
Yeah, it's
but
like
man,
dime.
they were number one in dime, right? And I think for them, they want to be able to play a little bit more simpler things when they're in that situation. And so to me, I get where they're going with this. I get why they got man dominant corners. They're still going to play zone heavy, but I think we're going to see a little bit more cover one this year.
Why dime is six DBs on the field? Why would you deploy that at the rate that they have? Like, what would be the strategy behind that?
Metellus. What's the difference? I mean, I think for Flores, it's probably like, what's the difference with him or Ivan Pace in there? There's probably not much of a difference. It's more or less like Metellus probably gives you a little bit more of a coverage ability underneath.
No question.
And he's kind of that little, he's like a joker, right? Pace is really good at blitzing, kind of a liability in coverage. But he's really good against the run as well. So like, hey, if we need to have Cashman's kind of like one of those, he's a good linebacker. Like he can do coverage, he can blitz, he can take a running back man to man if he needs to. So I think the dime usage it's why they did it. It's the same reason why is the Chargers running a bunch of dime? Why are the Rams running a bunch of dime? Well, for the Rams, it's kind of the same. They love their 5D linemen. So the Vikings are like, well, we don't want to take our 5D linemen off. So, but we need to be in a sub package. Well, okay, here we go. We can get into some of these things. I also think, and that you mentioned it, running more of a four down this year. I think Metellus is that dime back. Murphy is the nickel. If you look at the roster construction, they're trying to tell you what they're going to do. There's only like four corners on the entire roster, but there's six safeties.
Hmm.
Okay. They're telling you what they're going to do. They want to run when they go in four down. They want to kick Murphy in. They want to have Metellus as the dime back. That's what they're going to do. So I think you're spot on with the four down.
But would my thing with that is like, would Brian Flores tell us what he wants to do? Like is it like that feels like he's more
If you
deceptive
dig
than
deep
that.
enough,
Yeah, yeah. I don't
I
know.
I
It's
think
interesting.
Yeah, and I think you look. I love roster construction. I love looking at all of these, and like they will tell you kind of what they want to do. Now, I don't know what the numbers are going to be like, and we do have a game of attrition where injuries are going to happen. But I do think that it's pretty telling when they only have four. I mean, it's like, is there a corner on the Vikings that's other than Murphy? At one point, it was like, geez, they're getting rid of everybody. So I think if you look at it granularly and you really take a big picture view of what they're trying to do, I think they're trying to tell you, and I think you're spot on. They want to run four down. They're going to run a lot of dime, probably on third down, to get some more pressure on third down, since they've been so anti-pressure on third down. And I think first down, they're just saying, hey, look, we think that we can stop the run a little bit. We still think we can stop the run, but we feel like we can amplify that pass rush.
It's interesting. The last thing, and then I'll get you out of here. I'm curious about what the Cardinals have done. And they've done, it feels like they some of their strategy has been a little collegey. You maybe can correct
Mhm.
me if I'm wrong on that, but they've moved Buddha around a ton. And I just wonder, like, this as well as I do. Brian Flores and this staff, they're very aware. They look at, teams doing some different stuff around the league. Like, I just remember that game last year. The Vikings played the Cardinals. They were throwing some different stuff at Minnesota that Kevin O'Connell referenced after the game. So I just would love to hear from you. Like, what have they done that's different? And could you see any application carry over with the Vikings personnel?
Oh, 100%. If there's a team that I think that the Vikings could steal a bunch of stuff from, it's going to be the Cardinals, just because of the way that they've got that five across on the back end. They love to be multiple, even though they're in their nickel, right? So they're in a four down, but then, they love to walk Mac Wilson Sr. down as an edge, okay? Well, think of him as Andrew Van Ginkel, right? He can be back, or a Dallas Turner. He can be back. He can be down. You have one linebacker that you know is really good. That's going to be Cashman. You can move guys around. Think of Metellus as a Buda Baker, where he can run a blitz. They can build a 3-4 post snap and let him play linebacker. They can play him as a deep safety and play a bunch of different coverage rotations. I mean, I encourage people to go, if you have DVR and you save all of your NFL games, go back and watch the Cardinals versus the Chiefs in the preseason. They were doing bonkers stuff in the back end. They run a bunch of quarters, which is very similar to the Vikings. So I could see some kind of Cardinals-esque stuff this year, especially with having a guy like Murphy at nickel and Metellus being kind of that joker safety that can move around.
Hmm. It's interesting. Is there anything else with the Vikings defense or Flores that you're curious about, or that you're like, as you look at this season, that catches your, like, I don't know, how excited are you to see what they do? Probably.
Well, I mean, I think they're going to play more cover one, but I also think they're going to play more match quarters. I think they're really going to play, and all match quarter just means that they're going to play sticky with those corners outside.
Hmm.
I've said this forever. If you follow me at all, is that quarters is just man with rules. At the end
Sure.
of the day, it is cover zero. I mean, Saban used to say it all the time, like about Michigan State, of like, yeah, there's basically playing blitz coverage on every play. Obviously there's some nuance to it, but I do think that with guys that like a Isaiah Rodgers and a Jeff Okuda, you can play a little bit more off-ball man outside, which still allows you to play quarters. I mean, we saw a master class in this in the Super Bowl with the Eagles. Essentially, like, think of it in terms of like soccer, like those teams that, hey, we're just going to pack the middle of the field and let your wingers get out wide and do whatever you want. Or, hey, we're going to let you, we don't think you're a very good 3-point shooting team, NBA wise. We don't think you're a very good 3-point shooting team. So we're going to pack the middle and hey, you can go hit bricks all day. And I think like what they're trying to do is saying, look, we're going to pack the middle of the field, because let's be honest, they're going to play Detroit. They're going to play the Packers. They're going to play the Bears. What do Detroit and the Bears are the same offense. Packers are coming from a Shanahan McVay style offense. What do they want to hit? They want to hit the intermediate. So what's the best way to do that? We're gonna pack everything inside. We're gonna
Hmm.
look. You cannot throw fade balls in the NFL and to be sustainable on offense anymore. You can't do it. Why do you think the Seahawks moved away from DK Metcalf? Right? They were just like, look, we're doing is playing nothing but hero ball outside, and we've got this really good slot in Jackson Smith and Jigba. We want to throw the layups, and I think you're seeing that. And so I think what they're trying to do is pivot to more of that and be like, how can we pack the middle of the field? Let's put a bunch of safeties in there. And then we can kind of man these guys out. If they want to run fade routes, let them run fade routes. They're just not going to complete a lot of them.
That's awesome. Um, that was great, Cody. Thank you. Thanks for hopping on. It's always a blast. And I think, I mean, I learn every time we talk, whether it's text and I'm bothering you about a coffee house, or Blake Baker's blitzes, I learned. So I appreciate it, Cody. Thank you. Thanks for hopping on. And as I said in the intro of this, please check out Match Quarters. There's nobody better analyzing defense. So thank you, Cody. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you having me on, man.
And that'll do it for episode 108 of the Alec Lewis Show, presented by First Resource Bank. Always appreciate Cody's time. I joked about it through the podcast, but I bother him a lot about what ask him what he's seeing. Like he mentioned, he watches the film multiple times, frequently, of what Brian Flores is doing. So it's a nice set of eyes to have as I evaluate and analyze for my day job over at The Athletic. Like I said at the top, we will be back multiple times this week. We're locked and loaded because it's week one and the Vikings play in a week, and that is unbelievable. And we will soon be in Chicago, sitting in the press box at Shoulder Field, and cannot wait for that. But yeah, thank you guys for being here. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. And you're listening on Apple, Spotify, rate and review. And we will see you guys very, very soon.